Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining us as we continue through the 2022 webinar series, which is focusing on S/4HANA versus ECC and in understanding your options as a supply chain operations user, manager, or leader. If we go to the next slide, Stephen, the series that we've gone through is taking us into a deep dive between what is the differences that exist between S4 and ECC. Now, if you've missed any of the previous webinars, they are available on demand on the Reveal website. So I would encourage you to go there. And then for today, we're going to be discussing the difference between S4HANA and ECC in the areas of procurement and supplier performance monitoring. So just go to the next slide, please, Stephen. Today's presentation then is going to last approximately 30 minutes. It will be followed by some time to ask questions. So please feel free to capture your questions in the questions or the chat section during the webinar. You can opt to send them privately to me as the moderator, so we don't distract the speaker, but we will come back to those. And then immediately after the questions and answers, then we will show you how you can register to win the Yeti carry all cooler, which is up for grabs for today as well, which I think that'll be pretty cool, excuse the pun. All right, so next slide, Stephen. At this time, I would like to introduce you to the speaker, who today is Stephen Smith. Stephen is a legend as a Revelian. He's been an integration advisor with us for a long time. He has more than 20 years of experience working in both ECC and, of course, more lately in S/4HANA. And he's worked with clients across multiple industries. We talk about energy, consumer products, oil and gas, beverages, construction, mining equipment, chemicals, defense, and even medical equipment. So it's a wide array of expertise that we have. So that, please, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Stephen Smith. And Stephen, it's over to you, mate. Enjoy the webinar.
Great, Sean. Thank you very much. So today, what we're going to discuss is we're going to discuss supplier evaluation in ECC and S4, and what are some of the differences between them. When we start out, if we look at supplier evaluation, and assuming that you drink coffee, you should be familiar with Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks. And if we look at the two of them, sorry guys, we got a little.
You're good.
Okay. So if we look at Starbucks versus Dunkin' Donuts, they're both coffee suppliers. We all, as consumers of coffee, we go to them and we choose one or the other. Some of us like Dunkin' Donuts, some of us like Starbucks. And what we like about them, maybe we like the price, maybe we like the quality, maybe we like the consistency. And so internally, we are evaluating our suppliers for coffee, in this case, against some internal requirements that we have. And what Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts should do is, ideally, they should evaluate their suppliers on the criteria that are important to their customers, to us. And so if we look at it, how do Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks evaluate their suppliers? Maybe they evaluate them by material. Materials are important. At Starbucks, there's a large selection of coffees available. Dunkin' Donuts, not quite so many. So evaluating them by material availability, material options could be one criteria. Price, certainly price is an important criteria for most companies, but overall not the most important criteria. And then we have some other criteria that, especially with today's supply chain challenges, are becoming more important. Do their suppliers deliver on time? Is the quality consistent? The consistency of the coffee that they're being supplied, is it what you want? If you go to Starbucks and you order a blonde coffee, you want a blonde coffee whether you're in Seattle, San Francisco, Austin, or Boston. You want that consistency among stores, and that requires Starbucks to make sure that the consistency among their suppliers of their various coffee beans or coffee beans are consistent. And if we look at it within a system, so what we end up with is within what we're looking for, we want to be able to measure meaningful criteria on how a supplier is performing compared to your expectations. How does the supplier's price compare to other suppliers? Does the supplier deliver on time? Does the supplier deliver the correct quantity? If you order 20 pounds of coffee from your supplier, do they deliver 20 pounds or do they deliver 15 pounds and say that, in a few more weeks, you're going to get your 5 more pounds? And we're looking for things from the supplier perspective that are important to our customers. Our customers don't want to show up and not be able to get what they want, especially at a coffee shop that should have everything that you want, available right away. And of course, does the supplier deliver the right quality of materials? So what we want to do is we want the evaluation to be based on a systematic and repeatable process so that we can compare those suppliers not only against our expectations from a company perspective, but also against each other. And if we look at what SAP has in that, SAP has several summarized reporting options. Within the ECC environment, you get tabular reports. And within S4, you get those same tabular reports, but you also have the additional options of several Fiori apps that'll give you that graphical view of how your suppliers are doing compared to your criteria. The value of supplier evaluation is we want to make sure that as a company we're getting what we need from our suppliers, and we want to make sure that this is balanced on is based on a balance of performance measures. Supplier performance criteria and selection shouldn't be left up to a single criteria such as price to decide. You may get a great price, but if you can't get consistent deliveries, if your delivery times are all over the map, then you're not really going to get the value out of that price to your end customers, because they're going to show up at your store and you're not going to have what they want. And so even though the price may be phenomenal, you're going to upset your customers if it's important to them that when they show up they can get what they want, which is typically the case. We want to ensure that our customer needs are met. And so in the big picture, what we want to do is we want to identify what's needed from our suppliers to drive this, and we want to measure it. We want to understand what's important to our customers, how that relates to what we need from our suppliers. We want to drive our suppliers to these performance measures and use them to drive improvements. We want to also use our supplier evaluation to strengthen negotiating positions. We can use it to reward good performers based on objective data. We can develop suppliers into better business partners. Okay, all good things that we can do with supplier evaluation. When we look at the best practices for supplier evaluation, we can get a lot of this data automatically from SAP if we follow some rules. And these rules become increasingly important as we move into S4. They're not less important in ECC, but in S4, SAP is really coming up with standards. They've got their standard business processes that you can follow. So your standard purchasing processes are typically purchase requisitions. Purchase requisitions are converted to purchase orders on a release date. They're not they're not released before you need them. That release date is based on the delivery time that you're expecting from your vendor, and also the use of standard contracts and/or scheduling agreements where necessary. If we follow these standard SAP purchasing processes, then we can use standard out-of-the-box SAP supplier evaluation criteria, where there is minimal customizing to meet most supplier evaluation requirements. SAP provides 15 automatically calculated criteria that will evaluate suppliers on price, quantity, on-time delivery, quality, etc. But remember, for the automatic evaluations to return the correct values following SAP's standard processes is essential. One great example of that is a timely goods receipt. If your delivery date from your vendor is on Tuesday and the vendor delivers it on Tuesday, but it sits on somebody's desk until the following Monday to get goods receipted, SAP is going to ding that supplier for a late delivery, even though it really wasn't late. That material is, off to the customer, has already been sold, and you haven't goods receipted it yet. When the system goes to calculate whether that supplier met their delivery time or not, they're going to say they didn't, even though realistically they did. So again, it's real important to follow those standard purchasing processes, have those lined up. If you do that, then the automatic criteria will give you great data out of the system without you really having to do anything. When we set up the supplier evaluation, it's based on an overall score. It's a bottom-up analysis of supplier performance. It's provided by SAP, allows you to consistently, objectively, and numerically evaluate supplier performance straight out of transactional data. The transactional data gets processed into sub-criteria, and then the sub-criteria, you can have up to 20 sub-criteria. You would typically have 2 to 4 sub-criteria per main criteria. Your main criteria examples would be price, quality, on-time delivery, etc. All of those roll up from transactional data to sub-criteria to main criteria to give you an overall score that you can then use to see how your suppliers are performing against your requirements and against each other. And that overall score is based on the weightings at each level rolled up to that overall score. Okay. The main criteria for procurement of materials: price, quality, delivery, and service. And you can give them different weights. This is configured by purchasing org. So you could have a U.S. purchase org or an overseas purchase org giving different weights to different criteria. The weights should reflect the importance of the criteria to the company. And again, the main criteria are the sum of the weights of the sub-criteria, and the sub-criteria are the average of the weights of the transactional data. And so there's a lot of calculations going on here, but remember, if you follow proper SAP processes, the system does all of this automatically. Additionally, SAP does give you, you can create customer-specific main criteria, and you can also do customer-specific evaluations. We'll get onto that a little bit in the next couple slides. Okay, if we look at the configuration points, here's an example of the main criteria with the percentage weightings of each. The next one below that is the sub-criteria, and you can see that you can have a number of sub-criteria, and you can have the automatic scoring method over there on the right. And these scoring methods are straight out of the system. All you have to do is configure it to use a certain scoring method, and the system will calculate it based on transactional data without you having to do anything. So some examples of the methods, that one that's highlighted is determination from quality reliability statistics. So the system will automatically go through the goods receipts, see how reliable the quality it is, and sum up your data based on that. When we get into S4, S4 has some additional functionality for supplier evaluation by purchasing category. It's not available in ECC, so that's available in S4, and there are Fiori reports where you can get that data out of the system. All right, if we get into some of the calculation method details, here we have quality. The sub-criteria for quality would be goods receipt inspection, system auditing, quality notifications, quality ratings. As you can see, each of those has their own standard method. Delivery, on-time delivery, quantity reliability, shipping instruction, delivery confirmations reliability, shipping notification reliability. The vendor sends you a shipping notification saying that the material will be there on Tuesday. That's information that they've sent to you, so you would expect that to be very reliable. And if they are doing that and they're not delivering it till the following week, then you have a problem. Invoice reliability and service reliability. And then within those, you have your methods and your weighting for your quality reliability scores. Okay, and then these ones here are automatic, and then that bottom one is manual or semi-automatic. So reporting out of the box, this is what we get out of ECC. It's very traditional S4 GUI screenshot. It gives you a lot of information. It's easily created. It's quickly and easily created from the system. So you can get a lot of things out of the ECC system, but they're not as pretty as they are out of S4. When we get to S4, we have the ability to have a lot of different tiles for vendor evaluation. We have scores on those evaluations based on time periods, quantities, etc. We can compare vendors. We can do a lot of graphic capabilities within S4 Fiori that we cannot do within our ECC system. Okay, so kind of to wrap it up with some thought about what's important to your company's customers, you can easily design a supplier evaluation program using standard SAP criteria that'll meet your needs. This is not hard stuff to do, and you can get great data out of the system quickly. And if you have S4 with Fiori, you can not only get great data out of the system quickly, but you can also represent that data very graphically with ease. But it's all based on the fact that you have to follow SAP standard business processes. If you do that, you can have everything available to the system, from the system for you automatically. Okay, that was kind of the wrap up. Sean, are you?
All right, Stephen. Yeah, no, thank you very much for that, Stephen. Just a quick note, guys, if anyone has any questions, please just add those to the question or chat section. I'll be watching that as it comes through. And while we're doing that, I just wanted to, on this slide, just invite you to the upcoming masterclass on SAP Supply Chain. There's a boot camp on November 2nd through the 4th. And here is the details. You can actually scan that code right now. There will be a mixture of lectures and demos and hands-on sessions as well. There'll be some of the SAP experts sharing with you tips and tricks and best practices, and the strategic recommendations that you can start to use immediately. Some of the things, for instance, Stephen has spoken about today, we'll be able to show how to use some of those things immediately. So as I said, for information, please do scan this particular code here. And you'll notice that there's also a URL that's down at the bottom of your screen there that you can look at to take you to the details of the bootcamp. Then let's just, if we go to the next slide, question that this is just around a little competition for the Yeti Camino, and what this just would require is to ask you to go and complete the survey. So if you can scan this code, it will take you to that survey. We'll announce the winner on October 24th, and that will be shipped to you directly out there. But before we close up on that, Stephen, there are a few questions that have come through. So maybe let's just deal with those questions quickly. The first question is, if I have a different requirement than my European counterparts, can I set up my own criteria that are US specific?
Yeah, great question, Sean. So if you remember, the configuration is set up to roll up by vendor and also by purchasing org. And so assuming that you have a different purchasing org for the United States versus Europe, you can absolutely set up each one to have different criteria. And the system will evaluate European suppliers based on the European criteria and the US suppliers based on your criteria.
All right, great. Thanks for that answer, Stephen. That clarifies something that was in my mind as well. So that's a good answer. Thank you. The second question relates to, if I have ESG specific criteria, can I add these to my vendor criteria?
Yes, so SAP allows you to also have custom created vendor criteria, and so you could create your own criteria, in which case you could send out your ESG requirements and enter that data manually into the system and have it report that as an additional bucket in your in one of your main criteria. So you can absolutely incorporate that data into your vendor or supplier performance analysis.
Okay, so there's some flexibility there to be able to do that and become very specific to what's important to your organization, right?
Yes, there is, absolutely.
Okay. The final one which has come through, Stephen, is really just around Fiori, and the question is, how many Fiori tiles are there for supplier performance? Maybe you can just talk to numbers on the one hand, but just in terms in general around Fiori tiles.
Yeah, so as everybody should know, the SAP is expending a lot of development effort on the Fiori tiles. At last count, there were at least a dozen, somewhere between a dozen and 2 dozen tiles around vendor performance. But every several months, SAP is putting more and more tiles out there to allow the system to open up a lot of the data that it's capturing and display it in graphical formats. And so at this point, there are somewhere between 1 and 2 dozen, but I'm sure there will be more coming out within the next several months or years.
Okay, so one last question, Stephen. Says, is the data stored in LIS for supplier evaluation? If I configure my SAP system, will it go back in time and perform evaluations, or is it just from the time you configure it going forward?
Yeah, so when you configure and set up your data, you can run an evaluation for a period of time, and the system will store that in a table. It's not necessarily an LIS table, but it probably has a structure similar to an LIS table, but it would recalculate it as needed.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen. Then there's a question that says, where are SAP standard business practices defined for purchasing? I'm aware of textbooks, but do you have any accessible references that you could share around standard business practices for purchasing?
Yeah, the best source is SAP, and the website is rapid.sap.com. And if you go in there, you will see, you can look at all of their best practices. If you have an SAP user ID with a password, you can go in and you can look at the same best practices, but SAP provides you a little bit more information in terms of test scripts, configuration details, etc. So rapid.sap.com is where you can get the most up-to-date best practices. They also have best practices as defined by your system. So if you're running S4 1909, there are best practices specific for 1909. If you're running 2020, 2021, there are also best practices aligned with those.
So what I'm hearing you say, Stephen, is that there are also the opportunities that built into SAP itself is best practice. And if one is to follow the functionality and how things actually work, that there is a great opportunity there to find in and of itself some of those best practices already built in the system.
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Absolutely. And just to make sure everybody understands, the best practices are really designed by SAP with data analysis at the end being supported and accurate. And so if you follow those best practices, you will get usable data out of the analytics engine at the end. If you don't follow those best practices as well, a great example is creating purchase requisitions, converting purchase requisitions before the release date. If you convert purchase requisitions early and you have a PO that the vendor takes 30 days to get, but you convert the PO a month in advance, and as far as the system knows, it takes 2 months to get that material. And so best practices would say that you create the purchase order on the purchase requisition release date, not before, and that will give you an accurate delivery time from the purchase order, which you can't get if you don't follow that practice correctly.
Okay. Very good. All right, Stephen, I wonder if I might ask you just to go on to the next slide and then to the next after that. Let's go on to the next one. So folks, I see the questions that have come, or we've answered the questions that were out there, so thank you very much for that. This webinar will be available later today on our website under what's known as Insights. You will also find the previously recorded webinars that were out there and some other educational content such as white papers and blogs and some other helpful publications. So do yourself a favor and get out there and take a look at what's there that can help you along. And then I suppose finally is just to say that the next webinar is on December the 14th. This is going to be around the topic of what is different in S/4HANA versus SC as it relates to asset management. And it'll be a bit of a campfire discussion, so to speak. We're very excited about it. So that'll be on the 14th of December. There'll be some reminders coming out as we get closer to the date so that you have all the information that you need. And with that said, I want to take this opportunity, Stephen, to first of all thank you for the wonderful presentation you gave us. I think there's some real good insights into what's available there from a supplier and a procurement performance monitoring process, which gives us food for thought. And to those who come on to the webinar today, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for joining us today, and I certainly wish you a really good continuation of your day, and as it goes into the weekend, have a blessed and a safe weekend as we go forward. So thank you everyone for attending. Thank you, Stephen. And with that, we're going to close this webinar. Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Thanks.